A single duck can quietly out-earn your best chicken 3 times over, and most farmers never find out. Here's what the agriculture industry rarely advertises. Duck eggs fetch $6 to $12 per dozen at most farmers markets. Duck meat sells for 2 to 4 times the price of chicken per pound. And while your top laying hen burns out after 18 months, a productive duck keeps delivering for 6, 7, sometimes 8 years straight. That's not a minor difference. That changes your entire operation. But not every duck earns its keep. Some breeds will build your income steadily. Others will drain your feed budget and your patience simultaneously. One breed at the end of this list will do something even worse. It'll sound like a car alarm that never stops. We're breaking down 11 duck breeds that genuinely pay for themselves, and one that absolutely never will. Stay until the end because that last one catches beginners off guard every single time. If you could only pick one duck breed to start with, most experienced producers would point you to the same bird without hesitation. The Khaki Campbell holds a laying record that makes every chicken breed look modest by comparison. 346 eggs in 365 days. That figure came from documented controlled testing, not farm folklore. Dutch producers in the 1920s regularly averaged 335 eggs per bird across massive commercial flocks. These weren't pampered show animals. They were working birds fed inexpensive fish byproduct from local waterways. A well-managed Campbell today still averages 250 to 300 eggs annually. Compare that to a production Leghorn, which peaks around 280 eggs and then drops sharply after its second year. The Campbell maintains strong output across 3 to 4 seasons. Some keepers report solid numbers well into year 6. Now here's where the profit math gets genuinely interesting. A Campbell hen weighs around 4 pounds. She doesn't consume much feed. On good pasture, she'll find 50 to 70% of her own diet through foraging. Bugs, slugs, weed seeds, whatever she can uncover. That cuts your feed cost per bird down to roughly $18 to $30 a year. At 300 eggs annually, sold at $8 per dozen, one bird generates around $200 in revenue. Subtract feed costs and you're clearing approximately $170 in profit from a single duck that weighs less than most house tats. Think about what that looks like scaled across 20 or 30 birds. There's a management advantage worth mentioning too. Ducks lay early, almost always before sunrise. You walk out each morning, collect everything in one pass, and release the flock. No hunting through nest boxes 3 times a day the way you do with hens that lay on their own unpredictable schedule. The breed's name carries a piece of history. It was developed in England in the late 1800s by crossing Indian runners, rouen ducks, and wild mallards. When the breeder achieved the warm brownish color she wanted, she named it after the British Army uniform worn during the Boer War. Even early duck breeding had decent marketing instincts. One honest note here, Campbells are not affectionate birds. They're alert, active, and they'd rather be working the field than sitting near you. That's not a flaw. That's the personality of a bird bred specifically for output rather than companionship. If your goal is filling an egg basket and growing a customer base at the farmer's market, the Khaki Campbell is your foundation. Everything else builds from there. You'll recognize an Indian runner the instant you see one. It stands nearly vertical, like a narrow bottle balanced on legs, and it moves with a purpose that makes it look perpetually in a hurry. In many ways, it is. This breed has been doing active pest control for over 2,000 years. Ancient carvings on the island of Java depict runner-type ducks being herded through rice fields using bamboo poles. Farmers would move entire flocks through their crops, letting the ducks consume every slug, snail, and insect larva in their path. Fields came out clean, no chemicals required, no intensive labor beyond one person guiding the flock. That same system works on modern properties today. If you grow vegetables, berries, or fruit trees, slugs and snails are costly enemies. Most poultry won't address them reliably. Chickens scratch the soil, uproot seedlings, scatter mulch, and damage root systems. Runners don't scratch. They probe the surface with their bills, consume the pest, and leave the plant untouched. A commercial winery in South Africa runs a flock of Indian runners through its...
The results reduced pesticide application so significantly, the operation earned recognition from a major international conservation organization. That isn't a backyard experiment. That's commercial-scale pest control powered by a 4-pound bird. The name is actually misleading. Indian runners don't originate from India. The label came from 19th century European confusion between India and the East Indies. These ducks trace back to the Indonesian islands of Java, Lombok, and Bali. Their distinctive upright posture comes from a genetically unique elongated thigh bone found in no other domestic duck breed. You're not sacrificing egg production for pest control either. A solid utility strain runner female lays 150 to 250 eggs per year. Some push past 280. The shells often come in pastel green and blue-green tones. Color sells at a market stand. That matters. At only 3 to 4 pounds, runners eat very little. On active pasture, they can source 50 to 75% of their nutrition independently. They rarely go broody, which means they keep laying rather than sitting on a clutch for weeks. The trade-off is temperament. They're flighty and can startle easily. They're not ideal around young children, and their small frame means almost no meat value. But if you treat the Indian runner as a working tool rather than standard livestock, the return becomes obvious. It protects your crops, reduces pest control costs, lays eggs you can market at a premium, and feeds itself through most of the year. That's not a pet, that's a productive employee. This next breed came from a genetic accident and nearly vanished because of a fox. In 1949, a retired RAF officer in Wales noticed 2 unusually pale ducklings in his Khaki Campbell flock. Instead of removing them, he bred from them. Those 2 birds became the founding stock of the Welsh Harlequin, the only true Welsh duck breed ever developed. Then a fox destroyed nearly the entire flock. The breed survived only because one amateur breeder had kept a small number of birds separately. When Welsh Harlequins eventually reached North America, the population shrank to just 2 small flocks by 1980. Fresh imports in 1982 kept it alive. This breed has come close to extinction twice. That history tells you something about the people who keep it. They're deliberate, and they have good reasons. The Welsh Harlequin has one feature that saves beginners significant time and money. At hatch, you can determine the sex of ducklings with 85 to 90% accuracy simply by examining bill color. Males show darker bills, females show lighter bills with a small dark spot. That window lasts only a few days, but if you act on it, you know your flock composition before spending a single dollar on feed. Try doing that with chicken chicks. You either pay for professional sexing or you wait weeks hoping for the best. Production-wise, utility strains lay 200 to 300 eggs per year. Eggs weigh 75 to 85 grams, large by any standard, with white to cream shells. At 4.5 to 5.5 pounds, the Harlequin functions as a true dual-purpose bird. The meat is lean and processes cleanly, which matters if you're handling butchering yourself. But here's the trait that separates the Welsh Harlequin from most high-production breeds. It retains a strong maternal instinct. Many hens will go broody, incubate their own eggs, and raise their ducklings successfully. No incubator needed, no electricity cost for hatching, no human intervention. For anyone building a self-sustaining flock where birds replace themselves without purchasing new stock each year, that trait is worth more than 20 additional eggs per season. They're also calm, curious, and good around children. That combination of temperament, production, natural self-sufficiency, and visual appeal makes the Welsh Harlequin arguably the best all-around entry-level duck for someone with no prior waterfowl experience. Just understand that locating quality breeding stock takes effort. This is still a rare breed, but once you have a solid flock established, they tend to perpetuate themselves with minimal input from you. No 2 Anconas look identical. Their broken black and white mottled feathering is as individual as a fingerprint. People compare their pattern to Holstein cattle, and like Holsteins, they're working animals that happen to look striking. The breed's origin was misunderstood for decades. Everyone assumed it was British. A detailed investigation in 2013 revealed the Ancona was actually developed in New York around 1913. By the year 2000, fewer than 125 breeding Anconas existed in the entire United States.
Conservation efforts have since built that number to roughly 1,000 to 1,500 breeding pairs, but it remains a rare duck. That rarity is your opportunity if you're willing to seek it out. Anconas lay 210 to 280 eggs per year. Here's what makes them a farm stand advantage. A single flock can produce eggs in white, cream, blue, blue-green, and even spotted shells. You don't need to keep 5 separate breeds to create a colorful display. One breed handles it entirely on its own. At 6 to 7 pounds, the Ancona carries real meat value as well. The flesh is leaner and more developed in flavor than Pekin,
Birds reach around 6 pounds in approximately 9 weeks, which is fast for a heritage breed. But the true economic edge is foraging capacity. Give Anconas decent pasture and a water source, and they'll pull a meaningful portion of their nutrition from the land. That drives your cost per egg well below breeds that wait at the feeder all day. Their mottled feathering also provides a practical benefit most people overlook entirely. Against grass, dirt, and uneven light, a mottled duck is significantly harder for aerial predators to spot than a solid white bird. Natural camouflage. If you free range without overhead cover, that distinction matters. Anconas handle temperature variation well. They tolerate heat and cold without drama. They're calm, friendly, and adapt to different management approaches, whether you're running a rotational grazing system or simply managing a backyard flock. The honest limitation is availability. Finding quality Ancona stock requires patience. Most major hatcheries don't carry them. You'll need to connect with a heritage breed conservator or a specialty breeder. And because the gene pool is still limited, you'll want to think carefully about your breeding pairs. But if you secure good stock, the Ancona delivers something most breeds cannot: colorful eggs, solid meat, efficient foraging, predator camouflage, and a bird that consistently earns its place without constant management. The magpie duck was designed for efficiency. Developed after the First World War in Wales and Yorkshire during a period when feed was scarce and every animal had to justify its existence, this breed learned to perform on very little. How little? Magpies can source roughly 2/3 of their dietary needs through foraging alone. That's among the highest self-sufficiency rates of any domestic duck breed. On a small farm with decent pasture, that translates directly into reduced feed costs and better margins. They produce 220 to 290 eggs annually. Not quite Campbell numbers, but strong enough to build a real business around. Eggs come in a mix of shell colors, including white, cream, and occasional greenish blue, which gives you market variety without maintaining multiple breeds. At 4.5 to 6 pounds, the magpie is a genuine dual-purpose bird. Poultry conservancy publications describe the meat as gourmet quality. Because the breed carries a light-colored underbelly, carcasses process cleanly during butchering. If you've ever dressed a dark-feathered duck and dealt with visible pin feathers, you already understand why that matters practically. Magpies are also one of the longer-lived duck breeds available. 9 to 12 years of productive life isn't unusual. That means more productive seasons from each individual bird before replacement becomes necessary. Over a decade, that longevity compounds into a substantial cost advantage compared to breeds that need regular restocking. There's an agricultural benefit that rarely gets mentioned. Magpies are effective at reducing liver fluke infestations in livestock pastures. If you run cattle, sheep, or goats, a flock of magpies working the same ground can help control a parasite that costs livestock producers real money annually. The United Nations estimated only 60 to 100 total magpie ducks existed worldwide in 2002. Numbers have recovered somewhat, but the breeding population remains small. That scarcity makes finding stock challenging, but it also means you'll face minimal competition if you choose to breed and sell them. Magpies are quiet, climate-hardy, and straightforward to manage. They're not dramatic, they don't have a flashy hook or a single viral trait, they just perform reliably every day, consuming less than almost any duck their size while delivering consistent output. Sometimes the most profitable animal on a property isn't the most exciting one. It's the one that costs the least while still delivering solid, dependable results. That's the magpie in a single sentence. Every breed discussed so far is a sound choice for small farm production, but the pekin is the reason duck farming became a multi-billion-dollar.
More than 95% of all duck meat produced in the United States comes from this single breed alone. The origin story is remarkable. In 1872, a man named James Palmer loaded 15 white ducks onto a ship departing Shanghai. The voyage lasted 124 days. Only 9 birds survived the journey. Palmer sent 5 of those to a buyer on the East Coast. Those 5 were consumed before delivery. The 4 remaining ducks became the genetic foundation of every American pekin alive today. 4 birds, an entire industry. Modern commercial pekins reach 7.5 pounds in just 6 weeks. Their feed-to-weight conversion ratio is as low as 1.88 to 1.92. That's competitive with broiler chickens bred specifically for production speed. No heritage breed comes close to those numbers. For a small producer, that growth rate means fast cash flow. You buy ducklings, raise them 6 to 8 weeks, and have a market-ready bird. Whole pastured duck sells for $8 to $12 per pound at retail. Duck breast fillets wholesale above $19 per pound. Rendered duck fat brings $15 to $23 per pound at specialty retailers. That's the kind of price point that transforms a small operation into a genuine business. Pekins aren't exclusively meat birds. Utility lines lay 150 to 200 eggs annually. Those eggs run extra large at 90 to 100 grams each. They handle confinement well, their white feathers produce a clean carcass, and they're calm under routine management conditions. Now, the honest trade-offs. Pekins are poor foragers. They'll source maybe 10 to 20% of their diet from pasture. The rest comes from purchased feed, which elevates ongoing costs compared to efficient foragers like the magpie or Ancona. They almost never go broody, so you'll need an incubator or regular duckling purchases. And the meat carries more fat than some customers prefer, though others specifically seek that out. They're not a low-maintenance backyard flock. Pekins are large, they consume heavily, and they generate significant waste. They're a production animal, and they perform best when managed accordingly. But if your goal is building a duck meat operation, whether whole birds, parts, or value-added products, the Pekin offers the most direct and predictable path to revenue that exists in duck farming. Here's a fact that consistently surprises new duck keepers. The Muscovy is not technically a duck. It belongs to a completely separate genus. Every other breed in this discussion descends from the wild mallard. The Muscovy does not. Cross a Muscovy with any mallard-derived duck, and the offspring are sterile. The genetic separation is that significant. This isn't trivia. That genetic distance is precisely what gives the Muscovy traits no other domestic duck can replicate. Start with noise, or more accurately, the absence of it. Muscovies don't quack. Males produce a low hiss, females make a soft trill. If you have nearby neighbors or simply value quiet on your property, this difference is substantial. Most duck breeds generate enough noise to draw complaints. A Muscovy flock in comparison sounds almost peaceful. Now the meat. Muscovy breast is 98% lean with 50% less skin fat than other ducks, and proportionally 50% more breast meat. The flavor profile doesn't resemble standard duck at all. People compare it to veal or lean beef. That's a completely separate market from fatty Pekin, and it carries significant premium pricing. As foragers, Muscovies operate at an elite level. They hunt flies, mosquitoes, ticks, cockroaches, and some homesteaders report their Muscovies even catch mice during warmer months. During peak summer forage conditions, some flocks pull the majority of their nutrition from the land with minimal supplemental feed required. Then there's the maternal behavior. Muscovy hens rank among the best mothers in all of domestic poultry. A good hen will incubate 12 to 20 eggs through the full 35-day cycle, then raise the ducklings independently for 10 to 12 weeks afterward. No incubator needed, no heat lamp, no human management. She handles the entire process. The Muscovy is also the only domestic duck that perches. It roosts in trees, rests on fence posts, and uses elevated structures the way a chicken would. That gives it substantially better natural predator avoidance than any ground-sleeping duck breed. The honest trade-offs here are real. Muscovies grow slowly, 12 to 16 weeks to harvest versus 6 for a Pekin. Drakes reach 10 to 15 pounds, while hens stay at 6 to 8, and that extreme size difference can complicate breeding logistics. They can fly, so wing clipping or covered runs are necessary. Males can show aggression, and the red facial tissue around their eyes is vulnerable to frostbite in severe cold climates. But for a homesteader who wants a quiet, highly self-sufficient bird that manages pest control, raises its own offspring, and produces premium lean meat without constant human input, the Muscovy may be the most valuable single animal you can keep. Not just among duck breeds, among all poultry categories. If someone told you there's a duck that lays jet black eggs, you'd probably ask them to prove it. The cayuga does exactly that, and it's not a marketing trick. It's genuine biology that can command serious premiums at a market stand. Early in the laying season, cayuga hens produce eggs coated in a dark charcoal black surface pigment. As weeks progress, that color fades gradually from charcoal to gray, gray to olive, olive to blue-green, and eventually to near white by season's end. The pigment is deposited on the shell's surface moments before the egg is laid.
A damp cloth rubbed across a fresh cayuga egg will remove some of that color. The underlying shell is white. Now consider what this means at a farmer's market. You display a carton containing eggs that range from black to gray to olive to sage green. Nobody walks past that without stopping. Nobody. People pause, ask questions, photograph the eggs, and then pay a premium because they have genuinely never encountered anything like it before. That's the cayuga's real commercial advantage, not raw volume. It produces 100 to 180 eggs per year, which is modest by production standards, but the perceived value of those eggs sits dramatically higher than any standard egg on the table beside them. When your product creates that level of curiosity and conversation, you've moved entirely beyond commodity pricing into something closer to experience pricing. The bird itself is visually striking. Deep black feathering carries an iridescent beetle green and purple sheen in sunlight that looks almost metallic. As the duck ages, something unusual occurs. Black feathers gradually give way to white ones. A very old cayuga can end up predominantly white. It's like watching the bird carry its own visual timeline. Named for the Cayuga people of New York's Finger Lakes region, this was actually America's first commercial meat duck before the pekin arrived in the 1870s and displaced it from that market. The issue was cosmetic. Dark feathers leave pin feathers visible on a dressed carcass, and consumers preferred the cleaner appearance of white-feathered birds. The meat itself carries an intense, rich flavor with deep red flesh that heritage food enthusiasts seek out specifically. Cayugas are among the hardiest breeds on this entire list. Developed through upstate New York winters, they handle cold weather without supplemental heat. They're also among the quieter breeds, which makes them practical for properties with neighbors in proximity. Fewer than 5,000 exist in the United States currently. That scarcity, combined with the remarkable eggs and visual drama, gives the cayuga a market value that raw egg counts alone don't capture. Sometimes the most profitable bird isn't the highest producer. It's the one people cannot stop talking about. There's a story from 18th century England that reveals how seriously people once treated their next breed. Families in the town of Aylesbury raised ducklings inside their own bedrooms during winter. Wooden boxes lined with hay, positioned beside where they slept because the birds were too valuable to risk losing. When ducks were ready for market, drovers walked entire flocks 40 miles to London on foot. At inns along the route, they'd drive the birds through shallow trays of cold tar followed by sawdust to create crude protective footwear for the journey. That level of dedication tells you something about what this duck represented to the people who depended on it. The Aylesbury was England's dominant table duck for centuries. The meat is exceptionally fine-grained and tender, with white skin and a distinctive pale pink bill that traditional poultry experts still consider the mark of a genuine Aylesbury. Then the pekin arrived from China in 1873. It grew faster and cost less. The Aylesbury began a long decline. By the 1950s, a single significant flock in Buckinghamshire represented the breed's survival. Today, it is critically endangered. Most birds sold under the Aylesbury name are actually pekin crosses. Finding genuine stock demands serious research and established connections within heritage breeding circles. For straightforward production purposes, the Aylesbury is the weakest financial case on this entire list. Egg output ranges from 35 to 125 per year.
The breed requires more attentive management, and sourcing pure breeding stock is genuinely difficult. So why include it at all? 2 reasons. First, there is a real and active market for heritage breed meat. Chefs and culinary enthusiasts who prioritize tradition and depth of flavor will pay significant premiums for a genuine Aylesbury. In the right market, premium restaurants, specialty butchers, direct farm-to-table relationships, that premium can be substantial enough to make the math work. Second, conservation breeding itself generates income. Purebred Aylesbury hatching eggs and ducklings command high prices precisely because the breed is so rare. If you have the patience and knowledge to maintain a verified pure breeding flock, you're preserving something genuinely irreplaceable, and a specific kind of buyer will pay well for that. Beatrix Potter's Jemima Puddle Duck, published in 1908, depicted an Aylesbury. The town's historical coat of arms features the breed. An entire regional identity is tied to this duck. The Aylesbury is not a beginner breed, and it's not for anyone who needs returns quickly. But for a producer who understands that scarcity generates its own value and that some things are worth preserving beyond pure profit logic, it offers a path no other breed here can provide. The rowan looks exactly like a wild mallard. The drakes carry the same iridescent green head and chestnut chest. The hens show the same brown streaked patterning from bill to tail. The key difference is that a rowan runs approximately twice the size and cannot fly. Think of it as a mallard that traded aerial ability for a larger frame and a permanent address. But here's something most beginners don't realize. There are two entirely different rowan types, and selecting the wrong one is a costly mistake worth avoiding. Production rowans are the practical option, 6 to 8 pounds, active, decent foragers, and they lay 140 to 180 eggs per year. They're calm, quiet, and grow at a reasonable pace for a heritage breed. Exhibition rowans are an entirely different category. These are large showbirds reaching 9 to 12 pounds, bred specifically for conformation rather than output. They lay only 25 to 50 eggs per year. Growth takes 6 to 8 months to reach full size, and the hens are so physically heavy, they've been documented crushing their own eggs during incubation. If you purchase rowan ducklings without specifically requesting a production line, you could end up with exhibition birds that are visually impressive, physically enormous, and completely impractical for any production purpose. French farmers have raised rowan-type ducks along riverbanks since at least 1555, when a naturalist first documented them in writing. France considers the production rowan its ideal utility duck. The meat is leaner and more complex than pekin. That slower growth rate, which makes exhibition birds impractical, actually benefits the production rowan. More time maturing allows the meat to develop greater fat marbling and flavor depth. For a small producer selling directly to restaurants or at a market, that flavor difference becomes a genuine marketing point. Not every customer wants the fastest, cheapest bird. Some buyers specifically want the best tasting one. Production rowans are long-lived as well. Productive lifespans of 6 to 7 years are common. More seasons per bird means more eggs, more offspring, and lower replacement costs over time. The practical limitation is growth speed. You won't turn rowans around in 6 weeks the way you would pekins. If your model depends on rapid capital cycling, this isn't your breed. But if you want a calm, flavorful, pasture-compatible meat bird that remains productive for years, the production rowan deserves serious consideration. Just confirm you're purchasing the right type before you commit. Now, I want to address this last one carefully because I know some of you won't want to hear it. The call duck is objectively the most visually appealing duck you will ever see. It weighs 1 to 2 pounds, has a round, compact face that looks almost animated, and generates an immediate emotional response in nearly everyone who encounters one. People fall for call ducks the same way they fall for puppies in a shop window, fast and without much analysis. That response is exactly the problem. Call ducks were developed in the 1600s in the Netherlands for one very specific function. Hunters needed a duck with a voice powerful enough to carry across open water and draw wild mallards within range, so breeders selectively amplified the loudest, most persistent quack they could produce over generations. That breeding program succeeded completely. A call duck hen will quack continuously at a volume that is genuinely startling for a bird of this size.
One owner described the sound as small and relentless. Your neighbors will hear them clearly from inside their homes with windows closed. In any suburban or semi-rural setting, a call duck flock is a noise complaint that hasn't happened yet. And what do you receive in return for that noise? Almost nothing practical. They lay 25 to 75 eggs per year. The eggs are roughly half the size of a standard duck egg. Meat yield is essentially non-existent. A dressed call duck delivers less usable protein than a small game hen. Published Poultry Association research has raised concerns that extreme selective breeding for miniature size is creating reproduction problems within the breed. Shellless eggs, fertility complications, and physical mating difficulties have all been documented in heavily bred exhibition lines. Show-quality call ducks sell for $75 to $800 or more per bird. That's a significant investment in an animal that produces nothing marketable, generates noise that can damage your relationship with every neighbor you have, and requires ongoing feed with zero financial return. Here's the trap beginners fall into repeatedly. They see the small body and assume small means quiet. They imagine a tiny, peaceful duck drifting around a backyard water feature. What they actually bring home is a miniature sound system that produces no eggs worth collecting, no meat worth processing, and a consistent reminder that cuteness should never drive production decisions. Call ducks belong in exhibition settings, in specialized collections, in the hands of experienced breeders with substantial space and patient neighbors who have no production requirements whatsoever.
But if you're here because you want your land to generate real food or genuine income, the call duck is the single worst choice you can make. Don't let an emotional reaction make a financial decision for you. Choose the breed that serves your actual goals. Here's the single most important thing to carry away from everything covered here. Duck eggs routinely sell for double what chicken eggs bring. Duck meat commands 2 to 4 times the price per pound across most direct markets. Ducks resist common poultry diseases more effectively, handle cold weather more reliably, maintain productive laying for years beyond what chickens deliver, and several breeds can source the majority of their own nutrition from available land. The market conditions are favorable right now. Americans currently consume less than half a pound of duck per person annually, compared to approximately 100 pounds of chicken. That gap is not a ceiling. That is open space waiting for producers who understand what they're looking at. The small farm operators positioning themselves now are the ones who will own that growing demand as consumer awareness continues to shift. But breed selection determines almost everything about your outcome. If maximum egg revenue is your primary goal, start with Khaki Campbells. If you want a self-sustaining homestead bird that raises its own offspring, manages pests independently, and produces premium lean meat without constant intervention, the Muscovy is the most complete package available. If you're a complete beginner who wants a calm, attractive, dual-purpose duck that naturally replenishes its own flock, the Welsh Harlequin is your most practical entry point. And if anyone encourages you to begin with call ducks because of how charming they look, thank them politely and walk the other direction. Chickens will always have a place on a working farm, no argument there. But ducks have been consistently underestimated by the mainstream farming conversation for decades. The producers who recognize that first are the ones positioned to see the strongest returns as that changes. If this shifted how you're thinking about your flock or your operation, hit like and subscribe to my channel. Drop a comment telling me which breed surprised you most. I read every one of them, and